Happy Friday, fellas. Now it's funny. Some people probably felt like I was a little hard on the men in my last video, but as you know, I like to pride myself on being objective. I don't like to slant too many criticisms towards the male end. I don't like to slant too many towards the female. I like to be fairly fair and balanced and objective. So, in this video, I'm going to be defending men against what I feel is a bullshit study that I read that came out this morning. But before I get to that, a couple comments on my last video. Somebody lightheartedly asked me, they said, Alan, I was watching that clip of you with your BDSM submissive, man. I didn't know you did porn, man. You be doing porn videos? No, I don't do porn. I've been on a porn set before, though, when I lived in Los Angeles. Yeah, I think twice. I've actually been. It's funny. Most of y'all, well, most porn nowadays is like amateur porn. So that's different. But real, stage type porn is similar to a movie. Like if you know anything about the movie industry and the concept of on-camera acting, it's the job of the editors of that movie to make things look smooth and fluid. But here's a little secret. Well, most of y'all probably already know this. But let's say you're watching a movie. And let's say you're watching a 5-minute stretch in that movie. When they're filming that movie, it ain't like they just roll the camera for 5 straight minutes. Most movies are made up of a bunch of small scenes that are put together at the end to form the movie. For example, if you see a movie where 2 people are talking to each other, they're going to film me talking to the person this way, and then say the other person who's facing me, they're going to turn around and film him talking to me, and so on and so on. Yeah, most movies are little bits put together to be one long movie in a nutshell. Same with porn, man. There's a lot of fucking and stopping in most porn movies, unless, again, it's like the amateur type, what they call gonzo porn. I think that's the term for it, gorilla porn or gonzo porn. But most of the traditional porn movies, yeah, the man and woman would fuck for like maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Then they stop and say, okay, we need to readjust you here. We need to have this adjustment here. Then they film for another 2 or 3 minutes and they stop them and have them readjust and do this and that. That's why a lot of, in mainstream movies, why you hear a lot of actors and actresses will say that they sometimes don't really like doing love scenes or sex scenes because there's so much stopping. It ain't like just one fluid record. Anyway, I don't want to go on a tangent about movie making, which is a passion of mine, though. I actually pursued a career as a filmmaker. I still haven't given that up totally. So what was another interesting comment related to my last video? Damn, I hate when I need to write stuff down. Yeah, there was like 2 or 3 comments that kind of stuck out at me. Comments or reply comments. Again, one was about the porn. Somebody made some comment that was I know what the other major one was. Okay, somebody did challenge me on one of my assertions when I called men weak for giving women power, status, and influence that they didn't deserve. Some guy who I'm assuming is a millennial, a young guy, he said, I'm paraphrasing his word, but essentially he said, Alan, I don't know how harshly you can criticize my generation because it was actually men in your generation and older that gave women all this power, status, and influence. The one guy's like in their 20s that gave women a bunch of power, status, and influence. It was guys who were in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s who gave women all this undeserved power, status, and influence. So you shouldn't be calling, guys in my generation weak and no backbone. Most of us, we know these bitches ain't shit. It's y'all older guys that gave them political power and corporate power and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would say that's probably 2/3 true. That's probably 2/3 true. I wouldn't exonerate all young guys, no, because I see the thirstiness in young guys. But as it relates to, say, corporate America and politics, yeah, that's probably at least 2/3 true. That a lot of older guys, guys say my age and older, but the thing you can't escape, the blame still falls on men. You could debate on which age of men the blame falls on, but still, my main argument is you can't complain about women having undeserved power, status, and influence if it was men who were the ones that gave it to them. I don't care if we're talking about a man 29 or 79. It's still the blame falls on men. But if you want to be nitpicky about age, yeah, I would arguably say, generally speaking, exceptions aside, I would generally say men my age and older were probably more guilty of giving women a lot of undeserved career opportunities, a lot of undeserved political positions, a lot of undeserved opportunities in corporate America, etc., simply because they thought that was going to get them some pussy. Well, in some cases, it did get them some pussy. Everybody knows stories of women who slept their way to the top. I told y'all about a woman I used to mess around with. About roughly, 17, 18 years ago. I used to mess around. I ain't going to tell the whole details there, but there's a woman I used to mess around with who was a fuck buddy of mine, who I want to say to this day, she works for a Fortune 100 company. She started off as just like an administrative assistant, the formal term for a secretary. And what happened, she was black, she had a Caucasian boss, and her boss wanted to fuck her. And he basically asked her, he said, "How ambitious are you?" And she said, I'm very ambitious. And he, in so many words, he said, "If you let me have my way with you sexually, I'll help you rise to the top." And the trick of the story was she was married. She was married to a black man at the time. But she started fucking her boss. She would suck his dick like 2 to 3 times a week, every week. He would fuck her. And the turning point was one time they were at a Christmas party and her boss asked her to slow dance, which is bold of her boss. So nobody can say white men aren't bold. People always say, black men, you guys are naturally bold. White guys aren't that bold. Shit. This dude was white. He asked her to slow dance with her husband there. And she reluctantly agreed. And then he told her to meet her in a room. Anyway, he was fucking her doggy style and the husband walked in. And that's when her and her husband, he ended up filing for divorce. And that's when I first, if you remember the story, I was kind of clueless about this. When I used to hear the term alimony or spousal support, for some reason I automatically associated that with men paying women. Only to find out from her, she was probably one of the first women I talked to who was in this situation. She was actually paying her husband spousal support. Yeah, because when you get divorced, whoever is making the most money, it could be the man or the woman. If the woman is making more money, then she got to pay alimony and spousal support. So this sister I used to fuck, she had to pay her ex-husband alimony. Because I think he was in between jobs at the time they got divorced. So yeah, she had to pay him something like, I can't remember. I want to say it was somewhere between $4,000 and $7,500 a month in spousal support. Yeah, because when I was messing around with her, she was making over $200,000 a year. close to 300 grand a year. And she started off as an administrative assistant. So anyway, that's just a quick story to remind you that there's a lot of women who slept their way to the top. That used to happen all the time in the entertainment industry, in the world of media. And well, I wouldn't even limit it to just those two industries. A lot of industries, a lot of women who say weren't necessarily qualified for a particular career position would be able to get that position because their boss or business colleague wanted to fuck them so bad that they were basically like, hey, if you suck my dick and give me some pussy, I'll help you get promoted. And that's what this sister's boss did. He helped her get promotion after promotion to the point where now she's one of the highest ranking people in her very well-known corporation, which I will not mention. Let's just say it's a Fortune 100 company. Yeah, she fucked her way to the top, courtesy of her boss. What else? I think that's about it for the last video. Somebody made an interesting comment about me that, of course, I agree with. I happen to be in some other podcaster's comment section, and not too many people, but 2 or 3 guys was hating on me. And somebody fired back. They said, ARC is the most copied, duplicated, and plagiarized dating coach on YouTube, bar none. I don't have no disagreements with that because it's the fucking truth. Shoot, everybody know I did all them videos about people copying my shit. So I ain't gonna go on no lengthy tirade about that again. But I will say, for whoever wrote that comment, if you're listening, I co-sign with you. I am. Now, here's the interesting thing I pointed out, though. Most people would think Mo 1, which is my most well-known, arguably my most popular book, would be the book I feel has been the most copied and borrowed and stolen and plagiarized book. Actually, no. I would rank that number 3. Now, I've said that before, of my 4 major books. No one book that's been probably had more people try to either borrow, at minimum borrow, and at maximum steal talking points from. Again, my quick clarification between those two terms. When you take my talking points, either from my videos or my books, but you mention my name and give me credit for them, I call that borrowing my talking points. When you take my talking points, but you mention my name and or give me credit and even more so encourage people to buy my books, I call that borrowing. I don't really have, I'd say 95, 99% of the time, I don't have a problem with people borrowing my talking points, as long as they give me due credit. Stealing is when you take talking points from my videos, my ebooks, my paperbacks, my audiobooks, my articles, but you don't mention my name anywhere. You don't give me any credit. Now you stealing my shit. But yeah, the number 1 book that's been borrowed and or stolen from the most is actually The Possibility of Sex. Possibility of Sex. There's so many people who have tried to borrow and or steal from that book. It ain't even funny. More specifically, my concept of no free attention and just the overall concept of men valuing their non-sexual time, attention, and companionship. Yeah, man, so many people have stolen from that book. It ain't even funny. Second book, I would say, is The Beta Male Revolution. Beta Male Revolution. I've had a lot of people not only borrow talking points from that book, but I've had people actually take the title and use it without my permission. I mean, I don't want to rehash old wounds, but if I'm keeping it real, that's at least half the reason why me and O'Shea fell out. That's the reason why me and O'Shea fell out. Because he used the title of my book, The Beta Male Revolution, for a live stream he was doing with Tony Maceo from Max City Limits, but he didn't run it by me first. And I honestly, I took offense to that shit. But yeah, because a lot of people sometimes have treated that term like it was like a universal manosphere concept, the beta male revolution. No, I came up with that. That ain't no universal manosphere term such as alpha male or beta male or alpha bucks, beta fucks, or whatever, alpha fucks, beta bucks, or something like that are considered universal terms. No, I came up with the phrase, the beta male revolution, as far back as like 2002, 2003. I used to use that on AskMan.com. I used to use the term, the beta male revolution. Matter of fact, quick story on that, as far as people just using my terms and stuff, Mumia Obsidian Ali, and he knows this because I told him directly. Do you know I actually published that book about 6 to 7 months earlier than I originally planned on it? I was planning on publishing the Beta Male Revolution in January of 2017, but I ended up coming out with it in June of 2016. Guess what was at least 40 to 50% of the reason why I moved it up? Was because I was using that term on Blog Talk Radio, and Mumia Obsidian Ali, after he became familiar with me, he started using that term on his Blog Talk Radio show and on some of his YouTube podcasts. And what was interesting, some of his followers start associating that phrase with him. They started associating that phrase with him. They thought they were basically treating Obsidian like he came up with the beta male revolution. Now, in his defense, he never tried to act like he originated that. Most of the time, he would actually give me credit for it. He would say, I heard Alan Roger Currie use this term on an episode of his Blog Talk Radio show. But his followers were starting to associate it with him. And when I mentioned that to my brother was going to say, he said, dude, you need to come out with that book now. So that people, before somebody else tries to publish a book called The Beta Male Revolution. Shoot, if you wait too long, somebody else might beat you to the punch and they might publish a book called The Beta Male Revolution. So you better come out with that book ASAP. So yeah, I moved up my book about 6 or 7 months. That's the same way that I don't want to pick on AMS again, but I got to. And I've told this story a few times. That's just like alpha male strategies, man. I've had people that before they bought my book, The Possibility of Sex, they thought alpha male strategies was the originator of no free attention and the overall concept of valuing your non-sexual time, attention, and companionship. I've had literally as many as like 40 to 50 guys, if not more, that told me that. Guys who used to follow him or used to follow both of us, that now they exclusively follow me. And a lot of those guys told me, they said, man, Alan, before I bought your audiobook, The Possibility of Sex, probably over half the stuff in this book, I thought Alpha Male Strategies was the originator of this shit. Because he used to talk about it on his videos so much. I thought he was the one who came up with no free attention and was the first one to emphasize, not giving women full and indefinite access to your non-sexual time, attention, companionship, and using the phrase sexual companionship versus non-sexual companionship. I thought AMS originated all that shit until I became more familiar with you and bought your book. So that just shows, anyway, yeah, all that to say that, yeah, that guy's comment about ARC is the most copied and plagiarized dating coach on YouTube. You ain't gonna get no argument from me. Now, on to what I really want to talk about, which is 2 things. One, again, I start off saying that a lot of people felt like I might have been a little too hard on men in my last video. But I'll make up for that in this video by defending men against a bullshit study that I read this morning about marriage. A study I read on Yahoo claims that fewer people are getting married, more particularly women, are essentially losing interest in marriage because there aren't enough economically stable men available. Insert dog face here. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. That's a bullshit study. That's a bullshit study. Women aren't getting married because there aren't enough economically stable men. In this study, they consider an economically stable man as any man that's making a minimum of $40,000 a year or more. $40,000 a year or more. So, what you're telling me is that all men making $40,000 a year or more just can't wait to get married. Just can't wait to get married. That all men making $40,000 a year or more get women just beating down their door, begging for a wedding proposal. Come on, man. See, that's why I don't like studies. I know a lot of people like to cite this study and cite that study when they doing their live streams and podcasts. Man, fuck these studies, man. Most of these studies are bullshit. That's a bullshit study, man. He should be citing my book in that study, The Beta Male Revolution, and the subtitle of my book, which is Why Many Men Have Totally Lost Interest in Marriage in Today's Society. That's the subtitle of The Beta Male Revolution. Why Many Men Have Totally Lost Interest in Marriage in Today's Society. Now, I want to clarify, like I always have to, I am not anti-marriage. Some people have misinterpreted my comments in that book, The Beta Male Revolution, as being representative of me being anti-marriage. I'm not anti-marriage. I'm not anti-marriage at all. I'm not anti-long-term relationship at all. But that said, for those guys who have lost interest, their motivation for wanting to propose marriage to a woman, I understand it. I understand it. I empathize with it. And the most obvious document evidence that I understand it and empathize with it is my book, The Beta Male Revolution. It ain't got shit to do with economically stable. Number one, how can that be a legitimate study if women are not the ones who propose marriage traditionally? Not saying they're legally prohibited from proposing marriage. There have been exceptional cases of women who've been known to propose marriage to a man. I've seen a couple of videos, I think, here on YouTube where a woman proposed to a man. But traditionally, men have always been the ones who propose to women. So how can any woman say she's lost interest in marriage unless she's turned down at least 2 or 3 wedding proposals? If a woman ain't turned down at least 1 wedding proposal, she ain't lost interest in marriage. She ain't nobody proposed to her. So she need to STFU. STFU. In my attempt to diminish my level of profanity. STFU. Shut the front door. Shut the front door. No. Ain't got to do with lack of economically stable men in society while the marriage rate is declining. Read my book, whoever the person. There was one person who did comment. Hold on a second. Hold on. Excuse me. I'm trying to identify this guy's name, who was the main person commenting here. Daniel T. Lichter, PhD. Dr. Daniel T. Lichter, a professor at Cornell University. While the focus on finances might sound shallow or at least not very romantic, lead author Daniel T. Lichter, professor at Cornell University, tells Yahoo Lifestyle that money matters in marriage. Quote, economic stability is a key to a stable family life, to getting married, staying married, and marrying well, he says. Physical attractiveness may provide an initial filter that draws our attention, but economic considerations and shared values matter much more in the long term. A good job attracts and retains suitable marital partners, and this is true for both men and women. Now, I'll say this, based on that comment, I don't totally disagree with that. You guys heard me talk about how, this goes back to my 4 rows again. casual fuck buddy, long-term boyfriend / future husband, pay for play, and purely platonic friend. Those are my 4 major roles that I feel like all men fall into in the eyes of just about every woman they deal with. And I've always said there's different criteria that women emphasize for those 4 roles. So for example, like casual fuck buddy, women don't care about money if they get you in the casual fuck buddy role. They don't care about how much money you make. They really don't. They don't care about how much money you make. I've been a number of women's fuck buddy, and they didn't care about how much money I made. But interesting enough, and I've talked about this, I've had at least 2 or 3 situations where I started off being a woman's fuck buddy, but then later on, I wanted to upgrade to more of a boyfriend-girlfriend type relationship. Like one I highlight particularly, the woman I always refer to as Sharon, the one who I said looked like Sally Richardson. She was a classic example of that. We started off as fuck buddies, but then about 6-7 months into our fuck buddy relationship, I wanted to become more exclusive and be more boyfriend-girlfriend. And one of her number one reasons why she had an adverse reaction to that, she said, "Alan, you don't make enough money for me." Because she was used to dating guys who made no less than $100,000 a year. At the time I was messing around with her, I was making like 30, 35 grand a year. She didn't care about how much money I made as long as I was just a fuck buddy. So when it comes to the fuck buddy role, that's why of all the 4 roles, the role where I would say money is the least important is the fuck buddy role. A close second would be the purely platonic friend role. Those are 2 general roles out of the 4 where I would say money is not really an issue. Most women don't care about money. If you're either just their fuck buddy, and in most cases, if you're just their platonic friend. Where money becomes more important is when it comes to the long-term boyfriend / future husband role. I wouldn't say in all situations in that category, but in at least half the situations. Now, I do know men who have girlfriends that make more money than them, have fiancés that make more money than them, have wives who make more money than them. Stevie Dean Williams, my fellow dating coach, is a classic example. Stevie Dean Williams, I've always pointed out, not only would I say his wife makes more money than him, she makes way more money than him. I'm talking about like probably 3, 4, 5 times more money than him. Yeah, at the risk of telling, well, I wouldn't call it me telling his personal business because I think he's acknowledged that himself publicly before. But yeah, Stevie Williams' wife makes way more money than him. So he's a classic example of a guy who's in a marriage where his wife is the breadwinner in the family. Like there's some men who are known as house husbands. Just like back in the day, you had women who were housewives and stay-at-home mothers. Housewives and stay-at-home mothers. You have some men in today's society who are house husbands and stay-at-home fathers. And their wife is the one who's out there working, earning the bread. And they the ones who stay at home, keep the house clean, take care of the kids. Yeah, that's called a house husband. Like when I used to play Madden, I met quite a few guys that were in that category. When I lived in Los Angeles, I used to play Madden. I used to go to these different Madden tournaments. And I would meet guys. I'd be like, like, what do you do? And they say, oh, I don't work. I'm a house husband. I would be like, what? Like there was at least 3 guys I met from Atlanta who were in that category. They told me they were house husbands. They didn't have a career. They were house husbands. Yeah, they basically was the one who stayed at home while their wife was, they had wives who were either doctors or lawyers or corporate executives. They stayed at home, took care of the kids, made sure the house stayed clean. They did like most of the cooking. Yeah, there's a lot of guys, man, in case y'all didn't know that, there's a lot of guys who operate as house husbands and stay-at-home fathers. And so for those guys, their wives are the breadwinners. So not always when you're in the category of the long-term boyfriend or husband category, are you going to be the breadwinner or even expected to be the breadwinner. Like my brother, when he first met his wife, when he first started dating his wife was making more money than him. I would say almost twice as much money as him. Now, he makes more money than my sister-in-law. Now my brother makes more money than his wife. But for the first few years, when they were first started dating, she was making almost twice as much money as he was. So yeah, I know a lot of men who are a woman's boyfriend, fiance, or husband that don't make as much money as their wife, fiance, or girlfriend. The one category you're always going to be expected to make more money, of course, out of my 4 categories of companions, is the pay for play role. The pay for play role. I mean, just the title suggests what that means. When you're in the pay for play role, that means essentially that the only reason a woman is hooking up with you is because she expects you to take care of her financially, either in a short-term manner, i.e. a trick, or in a long-term manner, i.e. either a sugar daddy or a financially generous husband. Either a sugar daddy or a financially generous husband, what most people call a beta provider. That's the nickname in the manosphere for a financially generous husband, a beta provider. That will fall into the pay for play role. Pay for play role. In other words, if you ain't paying that woman's bills, she ain't gonna be with you. She gonna leave you, like almost immediately. If you stop spending money on that woman or refuse to spend money on that woman ain't gonna have shit to do with you. Her legs are not gonna open for you at all. And so, honestly, I think most aspects of that study is invalid bullshit. That is not the number one reason, or even the top two or one of the top 2 or 3 reasons why wedding proposals have declined. Marriage proposals has declined significantly. One is because of the internet and men just finding out more about women's true nature. And also you got things like, people brought this up in relation to my last video, things like the family court system, how women usually get full custody of the children, how some men get financially raped in divorce court, and so on and so on and so on. For those, a lot of those reasons, a lot of men are like, marriage ain't worth it. Now again, I'm not anti-marriage. It's highly possible I might get married between now and the day I die. I'm on the verge of cohabitating with a woman, which is right below marriage. Yeah, I'm on the verge of cohabitating with a woman. So I'm not anti-marriage, but again, I understand why men have, for the most part, lost a lot of their motivation to propose marriage to the average woman. And that's why I wrote my book, The Beta Male Revolution. Now, somewhat related to that, I had one of my listeners ask me, I think it was a Patreon subscriber, asked me, I guess there's been a lot of discussions on YouTube lately about guys who travel to other countries to hook up with women, either for short-term, non-monogamous, casual sex, or even to find a long-term girlfriend or wife. And I guess there's been some really harsh criticisms from both directions. So, from how I understand it, some guys have harshly criticized men who go to other countries looking to hook up with women, either short-term, long-term, monogamous, non-monogamous, because they say it means you're weak and have no game with women in your own country, whether that be the United States or it could be Canada, it could be the United Kingdom, whatever. You have no game with women in your own country, so therefore you have no choice but to pursue women in other countries. And then, of course, the guys who are in favor of going to other countries to hook up with either short-term companions, long-term companions, monogamous companions, non-monogamous companions, have said that the women in their own country are substandard, are no longer appealing, and that justifies why they have to look elsewhere. And anyway, somebody wanted to know what my thoughts were. They won't be lengthy. Here's my thing, man. Whatever makes you happy, do it. Whatever makes you happy, do it. That's my simple thought on that. If You can't find a woman in your home country, your native country, that's going to satisfy your sexual needs to your standards, to your preference. Go to another country and find one. Go to another country and find one. I have at least a handful of frat brothers that actually married women that were from another country. I know one off the top of my head. I know a frat brother man, he met a woman who was from France, and he ended up marrying her. They've since been divorced, but yeah, he was married to a woman from France. Here's my only thing though. I do have two contentions with finding women outside the country. One, if you're going out the country and you're hooking up with a woman who speaks your native language, of course, for the United States, that would be American English. Or if you live in another country, like, I don't know, Mexico, it would be finding a woman who speaks fluent, Spanish. Or if you live in Brazil and you're going out the country, you need to find a woman who speaks fluent Portuguese and understands Portuguese. Whatever your country is and whatever your language is, if you're going out the country, ideally you should be trying to hook up with a woman who's bilingual or multilingual. Because here's the reality. If you're hooking up with a woman that doesn't speak your language and doesn't understand your language, you're pretty much going to have to resort to just tricking. You're going to have to resort to tricking. That's what I did when I admitted, like when I went to Amsterdam a few years ago, I tricked in the red light district because some women couldn't speak English. I couldn't use my strong verbal game to, smoothly and seductively, persuasively seduce them. I had to trick. If a woman don't speak the same language as you, you got to be a trick. You got to be a trick. That's the only way you're going to get a woman in bed if you and the woman don't speak the same language. You got to be a trick. You ain't going to be using no verbal game with no woman that don't speak the same language as you. I mean, to me, that's a given. So just don't fool yourself. You're going to be a trick. Don't think a woman, if you go into another country and a woman don't speak the same language as you, that you pulling her because you're this smooth, charming, seductive man. No, you pulling her because of this. And if that's what you want to do, I say more power to you. I don't pass judgment on that. Second thing, I have an issue with men who do things out of spite. What do I mean? When I've talked about this on Blog Talk Radio and maybe once or twice here on YouTube. When I was young, there was two types of black men that I noticed would date Caucasian women or non-black women in general. There was some men who just love women. I would put myself in that category. Some guys just love women. So if they met a Caucasian woman that was attractive and sexy, they was going to try to hook up with her. If they met a Hispanic woman that was attractive and sexy, they was going to try to hook up with her. If they met an Asian woman that was attractive and sexy, they was going to try to hook up with her. If they met a Middle Eastern woman that was attractive and sexy, they was going to try to hook up with her. They just love women. Like, I hooked up with a lot of women, white women, for casual sex when I was in college and after I left college. But it wasn't because I disliked black women. I just like attractive, sexy women, period. But then you got other black men who I've known, a lot of guys I've known personally. They mainly messed around with white women because they hated black women. They were frustrated with their interactions with black women. So I call that dating white women out of spite. And same with going to another country. If you're going to another country to hook up with women because you just can't stand women in America or your own, whatever your native country is, then that means you're dating women out of the country out of spite, man. That could come back to bite you in the butt. That could come back to bite you in the butt. Eddie Murphy had a joke about that, where he talked about, he once dated a woman who was from some country in Africa. And he brought it to the United States. And I don't want to get lengthy, but in a nutshell, his comedic bit, he said, in so many words, he said, there ain't no point of getting a woman from another country and bringing her to the United States, because once she's been here for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, she's going to become indoctrinated to the American way of life. And she's going to essentially start acting like an American woman. I had that happen with one of my good friends from high school. Married a woman from another country, and they was getting along fine when he first married her, brought her here. But then after a while, she started acting like a regular American woman, and he had to get rid of her. They ended up getting divorced. There you go. There you go. In my Patreon exclusive portion today, I was having a discussion with a client, and I actually had to scold him somewhat. I had to admonish him somewhat, because he was basically criticizing sexually duplicitous women, which is one of the reasons why a lot of men don't want to get married, because they feel like women are too sexually duplicitous. But yet, he wants to be sexually duplicitous himself. And that's the problem with a lot of guys. That's why you got a lot of guys that are liars and manipulators. And I'm going to talk about that in my Patreon exclusive portion.